after member talks about how we've got to be more competitive. You walk back, a very important tool. So I appreciated your leadership, and we're going to get this done. We're going to find a way to make it happen. Senator Warren, you're next.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to follow up on the questions that Senator Menendez asked just from a little different perspective. Today's hearing is about the tricks and traps that giant drug companies use to evade taxes that occurs against the background of a looming debt crisis. So Republicans in Congress are saying they're going to trigger a default if they don't get to slash vital programs that help families all across this country. For decades, Republicans in Washington have pursued a three-step plan to rig our tax system and jack up the deficit. Step one, shovel tax cuts to the wealthiest individuals and corporations. Step two, slash funding for the IRS so that it can't catch rich tax cheats. And step three, whenever there's a Democrat in the White House, use the debt ceiling to hold our economy hostage. Now, Republicans pretend to care about fiscal responsibility, but the last time they were in charge, they pushed through tax cuts for the wealthy and rewarded big pharma and other multinationals for offshoring jobs and profits. Professor Ring, what impact did the 2017 Republican tax bill have on the deficit that the House Republicans now claim to care so much about?
So CBO scored the 2017 Act as increasing the deficit by $1.9 trillion.
$1.9 trillion. Okay. Because the Trump tax cuts allow giant corporations to pay a lower tax rate than teachers, firefighters, or nurses, our debt ballooned by nearly $2 trillion. So Democrats have fought back. The Inflation Reduction Act that Democrats passed last year imposed a new 15% minimum tax on billionaire corporations, and it provided the IRS with long overdue funding to track down wealthy tax cheats and make them pay up. So, of course, House Republicans are now demanding that we once again gut the IRS, or they're going to trigger a catastrophic government default. Professor Ring, how would the House Republican plan to claw back IRS funding and protect wealthy tax cheats affect the deficit?
So CBO has scored that clawback as increasing the deficit by $120 billion.
Wow. So they want to increase the deficit. And for the cherry on top here, do you know how they'll pay for that $120 billion in increased tax cheating for their wealthy buddies? By kicking 21 million of the poorest Americans off Medicaid, food stamps, and other assistance. That's not all. On the same day that House Republicans passed their disastrous debt ceiling hostage demand bill, Roll Call reported that they are still working to try to extend the 2017 tax giveaways, with plans to unveil a bill this month or next to extend loopholes that big corporations use to drive their tax bills down to nothing. And that would apply to big tech, to big pharma, and to big banks. So, Professor Ring, how much would doubling down on the Trump 2017 tax giveaways to the wealthy and the largest corporations cost our nation?
So I haven't seen any of the specific tax bills that you are referencing, but CBO scored the cost of making TCJA permanent at nearly $3 trillion.
Wow. So increasing the deficit, right, by $3 trillion. So
increasing.
Yes. Even House Republicans who are now, they pretend to care about fiscal responsibility, but they are working around the clock to try to extend the tax giveaways for their wealthy pals, which is what got us into this mess in the first place. Congress needs to pass a clean bill to avoid default. The United States government does not default on its obligations. And as for budget proposals that would reduce the deficit, let's start by closing loopholes for tax-dodging, offshoring corporations, and let's make billionaires pay their fair share. President Biden has proposed a budget to do just that, raising enough money to make critical investments in affordable housing and childcare, while also reducing the deficit by $3 trillion. That is the kind of responsible economic policy that we need in this country. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
I thank my colleague. We may have one or two other members coming, so don't think I'm just filibustering here to keep you in your seats.